Should we stop calling them Nazis and start calling them Confederates? Think about that while you watch this.
ICE isn't just like the Gestapo. They're closer to slave catchers. And once that clicks, a lot of people get real uncomfortable real fast.
I've seen a growing number of people online saying that calling this regime Nazis and comparing them to Nazi entities like the Gestapo is less accurate than calling them Confederates and comparing them to Confederate entities like slave patrols. And I feel called to lovingly weigh in here, both as a Black and Jewish woman who lives squarely at the intersection of these histories and as someone with a master's degree in Black studies. Most people don't know that Nazis modeled the 1935 Nuremberg laws on the U.S.'s brutality against Black people. For example, in the US, we had anti-miscegenation laws, which prohibited interracial relationships. In Germany, marriages and sexual relationships between Jewish and Aryan people were illegal. In the US, Jim Crow laws legalized segregation. In Germany, Jews were segregated in ghettos. And there's so much additional nuance we could dive into here. Even this obsession with purity, right? This idea of pure Aryan blood, this idea of the one drop rule in the United States. If you have one drop of Black blood, then you're Black. This idea even of blood quantum and how that's been deployed against indigenous communities. But please don't misunderstand me. What I'm not saying is that as Black and Jewish people, our experiences of subjugation are exactly the same. I think it's actually really harmful when people collapse our experiences in that way. What I am saying is that fascism has a blueprint. And across time and space, both domestically and abroad, fascists learn how to be more evil by studying one another. Just like we study liberation movements to figure out how we get free, they have their own twisted version of that. So I appreciate what Sister Ashley is doing here because to her later point, comparing ICE to the Gestapo and not to slave patrols implies that something that evil could never be homegrown. And if I learn nothing else, get my master's degree in Black studies, is that when we talk about Jim Crow, Reconstruction, chattel slavery, and the brutality our ancestors endured, we get such a sanitized version. And increasingly so, with the Prager universities of the world putting nonsense like this out. So Black folks in this country acutely understand that what we are bearing witness to is not a deviation from historical precedents, it's a continuation of it. That being said, this feels like a clear both-and situation to me. There's some distinctly Nazi shit going on right now, and there's also some distinctly Confederate shit going on right now. And when we begin to understand that there is a methodology to fascism, it makes sense that there are so many different kinds of parallels that we can and should be drawing. Should we?
I really like this video, and I've seen Ashley's video as well. I'll go ahead and link this TikTok in chat. Okay. I think there's something here that I think is important, and I like that a lot of the comments replying to this TikTok are like, why not both? How about both? And it's like, yeah, I think there's a, did the link work? I don't think it worked on, let me see. I think I already linked it on, okay, maybe that one will work. You can check it out. I think Discord, you already have the proper link. So I'll delete the bad one. I think it's a bad link. I think both, and I think that's correct. I think it's difficult because a lot of us aren't, America is such a unique creation in a sense that, like, this is so weird, but like, there aren't just Nazis and Confederates, right? Like everyone comes to America, immigrants, with their own version of who the bad guy is. And we create sort of a myth out of that bad guy. And then you have to think about the people who have been in America for generations and generations. They have a myth of their own bad guy. And then I do think there is something to be said about the way that Americans here really struggle to understand how bad America has been for people here, especially Black and brown people. And I think that disconnect is causing some of the issues. But this goes back to what we talked about yesterday, which is even if there's another civil war and there's a right side of history, the people on the right side of history are still going to be fucked up. You're going to have people who are racist and even Nazis on the right side of history. And so there's this idea that people forget, which is like we are too like simply complicated as a species not to have both and. So I think there's something to be said about how language is meant to convey a meaning that is understood by people hearing it. So right now, we've been openly using the word Nazi for a really long time. Confederate, remember the Confederate statues were coming down? That was like we deeply understood there was a problem there. And yet there were people who were talking about Southern pride and why it's important to them and how it's their history. But the thing about it, and this is why I say update your traditions, is just because it's your history doesn't mean it's worth preserving in terms of glorifying it. So I think there's something to be said about the fact that there's a little, like we want it to be this perfect world where there's good guys and bad guys, but that is not how it works. That's not how life works. And so, yes, there are good people who do bad things and bad people who do good things. But and this is the part where people start saying like, oh, you're complaining, you're being too picky. You know, you're not going to have a perfect Democratic candidate. You're not going to have a perfect liberal. if you're liberal and still racist, a racist can still be on the right side of history when it comes to this bigger issue of fighting this fascism and this Trump administration and this regime and everything happening. It doesn't mean when we zoom back in, we're not going to have layered problems. And I think there's like this myth that, oh, once we do this, once we figure out this, it's done. Just like we did with slavery, just like we did with anything else. Oh, slavery was outlawed. Racism over. Oh, people were allowed to interracially marry. Racism over. Oh, like segregated schools went to non-segregated schools. Racism over. It's like, oh, gay people got married. Homophobia over. You know, like that's not how that works. And so there is this, but I also don't want you to get overwhelmed to be like, well, then I guess there's no point to fighting, and I guess there's no point to doing the right thing, and I guess there's no real point to doing anything. No, there's always a point to being a good person, a better person, a less bad person. And we have to use language that kind of makes sense, but also we can't use like universal language, I think, in a real way. So whether you call them Confederates or you call them the Gestapo or you call them the Nazis, I think what you mean to convey is a group of people who are willing to oppress you at the expense of the people for their own selfish gain and power. And I think like a nice way of, cutting that short is just to say these words we are all agreeing on. But I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. What do you guys think? I don't know. Let me go back to Discord because Discord had some more to say about it. And I just want to make sure I'm because they're the ones who asked me to talk about this. Let's see. They were discussing how people often use terms like Gestapo and Nazi to link things to the current atrocities and how it can be anti-Black because it can be more palatable for people to imagine how painful these atrocities are when it happens to people of lighter complexion instead of acknowledging the actual history that's actually taking place here and how all of this just evolved from what was already in this country. That's what it is. That's the part that I think is so important and so impactful, is to not ignore that bad things have already happened to Black and brown people. And Black people specifically have been voicing their opinions on TikTok. And honestly, there's been a lot of memes and we love a meme, but I actually do think that's really important because it is, I can imagine if I was a Black person, I would imagine pretty ignored in like a very maybe neglectful way to be sort of like, I do think Black people in America get ignored to like an nth degree. Like I think it's, you know what I'm saying? Like it's obviously you know what I'm saying, but it's never a big deal enough. It feels like it's never important enough when it's Black people. And that's what's so painful. And then that's why some Black communities feel like they have to sit this one out because like, at what point is it enough? At what point are they always showing up? At what point are they always rallying? At what point is it enough? So I do think that some sort of white supremacy is at play here when people are relating it to Germany, Nazi Germany, instead of what happened here in this country. Because it is an easier digestible kind of thing. Like, again, if it can happen to white people, it can happen to anybody, but it's always been happening to everybody else. And you know, what's even ironic is like, it's not even just, it will happen to white people, that it will happen to straight white people, because we know trans and queer people have already been targeted. So it's like, yeah, I think we should be careful with our language and we should just add it into our vocabulary to keep it in mind that, hey, that thing that we've like these communities have been talking about, it's here, it's loud, and it's coming for you next. This is why we should all come together. The issue is, and I think this is the problem with politics again, is they do distract you with these like, oh, do you want like trans people in bathrooms? As if that's our biggest fucking concern right now. But the truth is everybody falls for it. I remember watching an interview with a bunch of Black Americans talking about how like they are really anti-trans and they don't want trans people. They're liberals, but they don't want trans people like in bathrooms. And I remember thinking like, okay, I understand this. I understand this so deeply that every human being on this planet is suffering from being born under bigotry. And so we will hold on to bigotry, minority or not. And it often is related to queer people because I feel like that's the last, I feel like in many ways that's the last, like ableism and queerness is like, ableism is probably the last, like, you know, I feel like we're still deconstructing these things. So it's gonna be a problem for a long time. But I feel like we have to accept it. And then we can do something about it. I can be very compassionate and understanding to why people of color tend to be more transphobic and more homophobic. And I can also acknowledge that a lot of us are queer in these communities and a lot of us love our families and a lot of us don't want to see our families hurt. So when I see content that sort of talks about, you know, if you didn't vote at all, or if you voted for Trump, or if whatever else, like, I'm going to be mean to you, like, you're a horrible person, you don't care about people. You know how many gay people I know who didn't vote? You know how many black people I know who didn't vote? You know how many Americans I know who didn't vote because most Americans aren't voting? So when you say things like, oh, if you didn't vote, that's a vote. Yeah, that's so reductive. Because you're asking people to get off, like to get out of their already struggling lives, their already exhaustive lives, and you're asking them to get involved in a system that has never served them, that has never prioritized them. And you wonder why they're exhausted and they don't believe in the system. And then the problem is liberals and Democrats will say, we'll make them believe in the system again. We don't want to believe in the system again. We want a new system to believe in. Right? That's why liberals are so frustrating, because they keep trying to trick us into believing the system is worth like loving or something, or the system is worth believing in. What part of this system are we supposed to believe in? And I say this as somebody who votes. Like, what is the system I'm supposed to believe in? So I don't blame people for not feeling motivated to vote, not because specifically minority people. I understand why you're mad at white people because you feel like that's their privilege. But like a lot of minorities, even white gays, white trans people, you know what I'm saying? Like they don't even know statistically if they're going to make it to 35, right? Not to mention disability and ableism that plays a role in this. How many disabled people don't even bother to vote because like they're not even being thought of at all? You know, so I can be very like empathetic and ground myself. And yes, there is a judgment you want to have, but also there's a deep understanding about why this is hard for people. They're already working 2 jobs. They can't afford eggs. Childcare is $3,000 a month. Everything is so expensive. And then on top of that, they're being told, hey, get out and vote for a system that has never, ever cared about you. That's so hard. That's so hard on people. And so I feel like I'm more or less, you know, less concerned that people didn't vote. And I'm more concerned that the system has the audacity to think that we should engage in it or care about it, and yet we should still show up for our community. So the same people I know who didn't vote also protest. Isn't that interesting? The same people I know who didn't vote also protested. Because for them, protesting feels like you're doing something, where voting just feels like a joke to them. And so, like, who am I to cast a judgment on this thought process when that's their limited tools and that's how they're thinking? Because, like, I kind of get it, you know? So when we have these conversations, no matter what we call it, we're really at war with ourselves, our relationship to the system. And honestly, we're already struggling within our family dynamics, within our friend dynamics, within our work dynamics. There is a lot to unpack here. Like, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed, but it will take a long time to deconstruct and pull apart all of these things. But yeah, I think Confederate, I think Nazi, I think fascist, I think rape apologist, I think pedophile. I think there's a lot of words that could fit and be accurate to what's happening in this administration. What are all the different facets of what we're facing? I saw this video here. Let me see if I can pull it up for you really fast. Let's see. Did you guys see this video? This one.
Arrest as many people that touch you as you want to. Those are the general orders all the way to the top. Everybody fucking gets it if they touch you. You hear what I'm saying? Less legals. We're going to look at shipping tractor trailer loads of that shit in here. So you catch what it's all about us now. It ain't about them. Professional, legal, ethical, moral. You know what we're talking about. Legal, ethical, moral. You're on camera. But other than that, it's what we do.
What city is it, Chief?
Fucking ours is Fire fucking City.
No more Minnesota nice. No more Minnesota nice. Minneapolis will strike. Minneapolis will strike.
That was Gregory Bavino, who I know everyone's saying he's out. He's heading towards retirement. But that's him instructing his Nazi group, his Confederate losers, his whatever you want to call him, this gang of losers, bro. He's instructing them on how to basically engage. And if anyone even touches them, like, arrest as many people as you want. And by the way, we've got terrible updates coming out of the ICE facility that kidnapped that little boy and his dad the other day. He's ill. He's not doing well. It's devastating to hear the news. It's absolutely awful.
5-year-old Liam Ramos is said to be in poor health after being detained by ICE with his dad. A school official has reported speaking to his mum, who said Liam has stomach pain, is vomiting, has a fever, and he no longer wants to eat. He's been photographed by a congressman at a detention centre in Texas, who says Liam keeps asking about the hat and the backpack that are in the picture. I think they took that from him.
So, you know, it's no joke. And I'm devastated. Like, I'm just devastated. This story broke my heart this morning. I was absolutely crushed. Here we go.
ICE detained this 58-year-old Mexican undocumented immigrant while he was working at his job at a McDonald's here in Minnesota. Now, we talked to this man's son, Anthony, about this traumatic incident and agreed not to show his full face on camera.
My dad was working at McDonald's over Southtown, and he was just changing the garbage in the lobby when 2 ICE agents walked inside and they just grabbed him.
So that very same day, Anthony marched into this building, ICE's headquarters in Minnesota, to make sure his dad got the medicine he needs for his heart condition when he says this happened.
I gave an ICE agent my dad's medicine, but I'm not sure if he got it because the ICE agent just smirked at me, like trying to laugh at my face for bringing in the medicine.
Now, a doctor told MS Now that whether or not he gets his meds could be life or death for Anthony's dad. So Anthony came back in today, marched again into that building, and refused to leave until he was 100% sure that his dad got his meds. But Anthony says that the emotional toll that ICE has taken on his family is just too heavy to bear.
I feel heartbroken, I feel alone. I just wish my dad comes home so he could be with my mom and my mom can stop crying at night. It's just like something's missing, like our hearts, some part of our heart's missing when he's not here.
Now, the Trump administration says they're arresting the worst of the worst, but Anthony says his dad has no criminal record. He's just a hard-working man trying to make an honest living for his family while working at McDonald's. MS Now reached out to DHS about this incident. They say that they give comprehensive health care to detainees and that for many of these undocumented immigrants, they're receiving the best health care they've ever received in their entire lives.
You know, that's what they're saying. They're saying, oh, they're receiving the best healthcare they've ever received. I highly fucking doubt it. Okay, I highly fucking doubt that. And so call them what you want to call them. Call them terrorists, honestly, because you're terrorizing the fucking community. You know what I mean? Like, if this isn't terrorism, I don't even know what the fuck is. And that's the thing. That's the thing about all of this is like, this is why categories I think have always been so important to me. Because we don't know what to categorize. We don't know how to put people in categories, not to punish them, not to hate them, not to be bitter, but to react accordingly. If you can't identify what you're seeing, how do you know how to react, right? Which, by the way, speaking of understanding how to understand what you're viewing and seeing, huge news. Let's call it justice, if we will.
A former Illinois sheriff's deputy has received the maximum sentence for the fatal shooting of Sonia Massey, who was killed in her own kitchen after calling 911 for help. You may recall seeing this body camera video from July 2024. Former Deputy Sean Grayson said he thought Massey was going to throw a pot of boiling water at him before he fired his gun. Well, today, a judge sentenced Grayson to 20 years in prison and 2 years of supervised probation after he was convicted last October of second-degree murder. A former Illinois...
So if you guys remember, she called the police. They don't know. I don't remember if she was having like a mental health crisis or something, but something was wrong. She asked for help, and when they showed up, they shot her. And he says, oh, he was afraid she was going to pour boiling water on him. I'm going to need you to notice what you're seeing, because what I notice with police is they're so badly trained that often when it's a mental health crisis or a disability crisis or something, they just always react wrong. There was that very, the story that stays in my mind always is when this caregiver was taking care of one of their patients, and their patient got out and was on the street and decided to lay down on the street to feel comfortable. And the police showed up with guns drawn, and the caretaker was like, stop, he's fine. He's just having a moment, relax. And the police just like, guns drawn, guns drawn, guns drawn. And it's just like, what are you doing? And that desire to always pull out your gun, you know, that desire to always escalate to more violence, that desire to just see people as always dangerous. Now, I understand, right? We want to be cautious. We can't always treat our community like it has our best intentions in mind, okay? I didn't even mean to go in this direction, but everybody get ready. Trigger warning. This story is devastating. This all connects, because here's what happens. Let me go to paint really fast, and then I'll explain to you why there's such a struggle with humanizing each other, because it's really hard, right? Like, I'll stand by this every time. Being kind to people is hard. Being a good person is hard. Everybody thinks it's easy, but it's not. And if it was easy, the world would look very different. The world would look very different if it was very easy to be a good person. Okay? So what happens is we have this, let's see, we have our lives. Okay, so here's our life. Here's me and you, girls. Okay, we're so cute. Oh my God. And we have all of these problems. Oh my God, look at all of these problems we have to deal with. And this is just regular life stuff. Getting to school on time, working on our health, our finances are crazy, our kids need help, our neighbor needs help, our parents, our neighborhood needs, the lawn taken care of. Here's just like all of our problems. Okay, that's a lot of problems. And then we have above us our neighborhood's problems, our city problems. So then, oh my God, our city has all these problems, right? All these strangers we don't even know. Okay, they have problems too. And then, oh my gosh, look at our state. Okay. And then it's like, oh my God, our country. And it goes on. And then it feels like the burden of the weight of the world is coming down on your shoulders. And you're like, Jesus, I can't carry the weight of this. Well, you were never meant to. You were never meant to, right? The whole point is that you maybe hold up this layer, but then the people here hold up this layer and we hold up this layer. And then together, we're all actually keeping it together. Okay. The idea is like the strength comes from the foundation. But instead, it feels like it's crumbling from the top on top of us. And that's why we say, okay, the system isn't working if it feels like everybody is getting fucking pummeled, right? Except for the people who are at the very top, and they're just like sitting on top of all of us while we're being crushed at the bottom. So they're sitting here like, hey, this is working. And I'm like, hey, you only think it's working because you're not getting crushed, okay? So that's why we have to understand that we are not, when we say like the system is broken, we're saying like the literal system. It's not just people that are broken, okay? Because you have to remember, people are also broken. Individuals are also broken. I'll give you an example. Just heard this news today, devastating news, okay?
This morning, a Facebook marketplace transaction gone wrong led to the murder of a 30-year-old pregnant mother.
You always see it on the news, but you never think that it would happen to you or to someone that you love.
Police say Eliza Morales was stabbed 70 times. They say the 19-year-old suspect, Nadis Revucas, bought a truck for Morales' husband on Facebook Marketplace. And when he arrived to pick up the bill of sale, Eliza answered the door. Court documents say Revucas was angry about the condition of the truck and decided to take out his frustration on Eliza.
We're in shock. We can't believe that evil even exists.
This is not the first violent crime related to Facebook Marketplace transactions. Just last week, a Marine veteran was shot and killed in Missouri while trying to sell his phone on Facebook Marketplace, arranging to meet with a potential buyer at his home. 3 18-year-olds and a minor are now charged with his murder. Facebook parent company Meta says more than 1 billion people visit Facebook Marketplace worldwide every month. Both law enforcement and Facebook recommend meeting in a public spot and keeping personal details like your home address private. Eliza's family now grieving 2 lives lost as she was set to deliver their second girl in March.
I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I can get every last second back with her and just continue to try to live through her for my daughter and continue to be strong for my family.
Prosecutors say Nadis Revucas has now confessed. He's due in court today. And
okay, I'm going to say something because this is what's so difficult, right? First, that's devastating. Just, I cannot even imagine and process it. I believe this was the mother or mother-in-law. She said, we never imagined it could happen to us. I want you to hold on to that thought. And I need you to connect it to everybody else on the planet. Every immigrant that voted for Trump, every white person that voted for Trump, every person that ignores politics, everyone that does everything. There's two kinds of people, who we're at odds with right now. The people who forget that them being informed has nothing to do with other people. They think they're better than other people for staying informed, but it's actually your privilege that you are informed, right? Ironically. Okay. 2, the people who don't stay informed because they think it won't happen to them, just like the women who go home and take men home on dates on Tinder. Hey, ladies, what are we doing? Because they think it won't happen to them. Women who open the doors for men, why wouldn't they? Thinking it won't happen to them. We drive our cars every day thinking we're not going to be the one to die in a car accident today. It's in our nature to always assume it won't happen to us. This isn't unique to whiteness. It's just compounded by white privilege. So when people say, oh, this girl Hannah and her husband, this immigrant husband, thought it would never happen to them, that's not unique to whiteness. But I will tell you this, it can be furthered or exacerbated by whiteness, white privilege. So that's the part you want to be critical of. But it actually is, for your own sake, I need you to be okay and process that human beings never think it's going to be them. And then the ones who do are considered paranoid and overthinkers. Have you ever been called paranoid or an overthinker? Me? I tell you guys all the time, my siblings have my location in case I go missing, and some people think that's crazy. Some of you in my own chat have told me, Brittany, like nobody has my location. Yeah, because you think it's not going to happen to you. Because you think you're not the one who's going to go missing. Versus I come from a family that assumes it's going to be us. You know, well, not with everything though, obviously, because they voted MAGA, right? So then you have to really process that like everything you do, it's the same thought in other people's brains. Of course, you don't think it's going to happen to them. They don't probably know anyone who is that person, right? They've never been taken by ICE. Why would it be them? Yes, you can call it privilege, and that could be the case for some categories, but it's also the other side of it. And still, staying informed is a form of privilege. Not for everybody who stays informed, but for some people, it is a form of privilege. How many of us, Ezra Klein, what did Ezra Klein say about politics? Can't we just go back to when we were talking about politics like it was fun? He stays informed because it's his privilege. It's fun for him, right? How many people join political bubbles because they think it's fun? You guys, politics is a sport for a lot of people. When I was younger, I used to describe politics as fun because it was. It was just something that you did, like it was important, but it was like fun. Because even as a queer person, when I was a conservative, it was more fun. When I became a liberal and a progressive, it was obviously different. Also, P.S., remember how I told you I voted McCain? And one of my thought processes was Barack Obama was too young, but there was also a secondary process. Are you ready for this? In 2008, I was still pro-life. Process that information, right? And by the way, my relationship with abortion hasn't much changed from that person, except my thought process is different. I still think it's a life in the making. I just think it might be better to end that life than continue it to term. But remember that I have a very specific relationship with life and death. That's also why my plant-based journey is so specific, right? Because that's how did you come to change your mind with that? Literally harm reduction. Literally harm reduction. What in this circumstance is going to be more harm in the long run? What is going to be better in this circumstance? And of course, the overall legality of the government doesn't have a business to tell you what to do with your body, right? Obviously, the overall reality that the government should not be in our business, even though there are certain times when I think the government should be in our business. You know what I mean? Obviously, we take kids out of homes, we save children from abusive households, right? But I do think for me, it's always going to be like, what is the most harm reduction? So like I went from being pro-life, marching for March on Life protests, like talking to people about being pro-life, to literally supporting women after their abortions and like either holding funerals and or helping them, being there for people while they've just taken the pill, like whatever women have needed from me. I went from being like a pro-lifer to like being the person. And you know what's funny is I had a woman once, wonderful woman. She reached out to me and said, hey, I know you really want to be a mom. This is the time when I really wanted to be a mom. She said, but I'm going to have an abortion. And I wondered if it would be appropriate to like basically lean on you in so few words. And I said, yeah, I appreciate the consideration you had for my feelings, but these are two separate things and they don't overlap, but I can see why you think they would, because for a lot of people out here, they'll say to you, oh, I've wanted a baby my whole life and you're killing yours, right? That's probably what she was used to hearing. And I told her, you can call me girl. It's okay. Like, I get it. You made the choice that was best for you. Let's talk about it. And it was fine, because at the end of the day, like, I am able to, and this took a lot of extrospection, separate my own desires from other people's choices. This is a skill. And I don't think as many people have it as they think they do, because if you did, okay, you would be able to understand why humans do what they do. And then this conversation about free will, because I think that's the problem. I don't think people have free will the way other people do. So I think that probably always overshadows my belief systems about people, which is why I always raise an eyebrow at like people, you know, assuming like, oh, you made a choice. Sure. You made a kind of choice. Yeah. Like you made as informed of a choice as you could make, you know? I mean, we live in a world where informed consent is such a foreign concept to people, and then people really talk about choice. Like, what does choice even mean if it's not even informed, really? So, you know, again, when we talk about these topics, I just know as a person who's changed a lot that it requires a lot of work, and you have to do it even when people are telling you you're a piece of shit. Because that's the thing I see. Like, look, I'm not going to hold my breath for former conservatives to be not conservative, especially if they're older. But I will tell them this, it's a journey, and you have to keep doing it even if everybody bullies you along the way, because you have to do the right thing even if nobody like is supporting you. You doing the right thing isn't about getting praise from other people. You just have to do the right thing. But the problem is in America, we have a hero complex. So we want, and we should get validation from our community for sure, but we have a hero complex. And I think a lot of people want to be given gold stars from being like MAGA to not MAGA, right? I think that's the dilemma, is like, I'm not going to give you a gold star for like leaving the conservative party, but like, congratulations on your journey. But I think they want to be praised, and or people think they have to, so then people want to take them down a peg. I just watched a woman. Oh man, I wish I saved it. Oh, I wish I saved it. Wait, can I look at my own activity on desktop? Hold on, I wish I saved this. Wait. Oh shoot, my phone's not here, is it? I just watched this TikTok about this woman. This Black woman was commenting on how Hannah from yesterday, the white woman, and another woman, I believe she was Hispanic, both came out and said their husbands were taken and that they regret where they were, but like, okay. And then the internet, she was like, you guys went for these women so hard that the white woman stayed and got a platform, and the Hispanic woman left and got bullied off this platform. And she said, that's really fucked up. And then the comment section was like, I was mean to both of them, for the record. And I'm sitting here like, why is anyone being mean to anybody? Like, why is anyone being mean to anybody? Like, I get it, being critical, but I think comment sections forget they're not public figures. Like, I wish the comment section would either get on this fucking app and put their name to their words, or stop being so mean to the comment sections. Because, like, you're not even putting your name on the line. You know what I mean? Like, these people are at least putting their faces out there and trying to advocate for their families that were kidnapped by ICE. You're just out here being mean. So it's like, you know, what is that? And then a part of me is like devastated because, yeah, like people of color will absolutely be Trump voters and they will have been kidnapped and they deserve liberation. But, you know, people are going to want to ignore them or say like, you sold out or something else. Like, people got to do what they got to do. You know, people got to do what they got to do. So, you know, there's always that conversation about like, what is the privilege? The privilege to leave America, the privilege to stay in America, the privilege to live in a nice place in America, the privilege to not vote, the privilege. It's only privilege if it's privilege. It's only privilege if it's privilege. It's like, to me, sometimes I think we just miscategorize people so badly. It's kind of like saying, oh, it's your privilege to stay poor. Like, you're so privileged that you're deciding to stay poor. It's like some people are so poor and they see no way out, so they can't even think about getting out of being poor. And they're like, that's your privilege. I don't have the privilege to stay poor. It's like, well, sure, like maybe in some ways staying in poverty is privilege, but like also, you know what I mean? Like, that's what you sound like when you're like, I can't believe you didn't vote. When people are so beaten down by the system, they think, vote for what? You know, they don't even think they're going to be heard. We're talking about fraud, election fraud, time and time again. Guys, there is a very high chance the US government is going after Trump again for fraud, election fraud. What if we find out Trump was elected fraudulent, right? Now, here's another reinforcement that the system doesn't work. Because not only did he get elected, but he fucked us all over in, how long has he been president? You know what I mean? How long has he been president? And we have been fucked. Like 10 years of damage has been done so quickly in this man's second term. And then you want people to sit there and be like, oh yeah, I believe in this country. This same country that was founded on genocide, this same system that's been fucked since day one. So again, you can sit here in 5 years. Chad said 5 years. He's been president for 5 years. You can sit here and attack people. And I do think there's a proper place for criticism. I 100% do. But be careful of you falling into this idea that you are better than other people, or that you are high and mighty, or that you are smarter or more compassionate. You know what I mean? Like, just think about that process of you thinking you're better than other people. Because again, I think the future is compassionate. The future is community. The future is liberation. The future is less bigotry. The future is less prejudice. The future is more love. The future is adults actually being the adults in the room, which is what I think we're missing. We are missing adult leaders. We are missing people. Hassan was just banned on Twitch for 7 days because of something he said. Honestly, crazy 7 days though. Like, that's, come on, bro, relax, okay? 7 days he was banned. Did you guys see?
What's more likely is that they filmed his fucking face.
Wait.
And they put him on a watch list. As Ken Klippenstein reports in his rabid ultra-Zionist pigs.
That's what he said.
All the fucking Israel dick riders out there, you fucking rabid ultra-Zionist pigs.
That's what got him banned for 7 days. It almost sounds like a poem or something. That could be a song. Somebody make that into a song. But, okay, I get it. Twitch has its rules, I guess. I don't know. 7 days is crazy, though. 7 days. I don't know if it was because he said Zionist and pig in the same sentence, and pig is a Jewish slur. But I don't know if that was what the issue was. But hold on.
You fucking run around going, oh my, out there, you fucking rabid ultra-Zionist.
And rabid is like really racist to most groups. So I would be cautious saying that word ever. Right? So I don't know. Chet said pig is a Jewish slur. As far as I know, I was always raised with calling Jewish people pigs absolutely racist. Like, maybe I'm like in a different bubble, but I was always taught like rabid is rabid animal. So like rabid is always like animalistic language towards POC. And then pig and Jewish people apparently are like some derogatory term, some relationship to. And then I don't know if it's a slur. I shouldn't say slur. Derogatory? Maybe not slur. That's a big word. Derogatory? You know, I think that's more apt. And then it's the phrase Zionist pig you guys said specifically. Yeah, like Zionist pig. Yeah, chat says, but he's talking about Zionists, not Jewish people. Yeah, but you know the world doesn't know the difference. So the world is like convinced he's anti-Jewish, right? So it's like that kind of thing. But I'm surprised they gave him a 7-day ban and not like a 24-hour one. Okay, Discord said to be frank, Hassan really needs a vacation. Yeah, he does need vacation. Well, you know, don't we all? But look, moving into the future, I understand when we say things because we're angry or being funny or it comes out. I would love for us to not do that. Like, I would love to live in a world where the adults having the conversations in the room were actually able to not say the things. Because I understand, and this is why we say, by the way, this is why I think people are interesting, because when people say like, oh, I talk the same way in public that I do in private, I'm like, do you expect kindergarten teachers to speak the same way to their class as they do at home? You know what I mean? Like, a part of me is like, yeah. Chad says it's a Jewish German. It's not exactly a Jewish slur, but pig is something Germans like to add to words to make it an insult. So Jew pig is a slur because it's heavily used in Nazi propaganda. Thank you. That's okay. I was like, I know this. I was taught this was bad. Okay. I was taught this was bad, putting them together. So that kind of stuff, like, I would really like for the adults in the room to never say anything that is that like confusing. Like, we have to do so much work for Hassan to give him good faith to even dissect that language. Because if a white nationalist had said that, I would have been like, you know what I'm saying? So I don't want to have to do that for people that are supposed to be the good guys. I don't want to have to work that hard. to deconstruct his language and be like, oh, no, no. And that counts for me too. That counts for me too. I don't want people to have to jump through fucking hoops to explain why Brittany, what she said wasn't da 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 da. So I would like to eventually, you guys, you know how we keep saying when I'm 40? Guys, I'm still 3 years away. Holy fuck. I'm 3.5 years away. Is it going to really take me 3 years to clean up my language? 3 years? It seems so short. Like 3 years is nothing. But oh my crap, when I think about it, 3 years sounds so like, it's low. You know what I mean? Chad says, was he not referring to the cops as pigs? Well, okay, so yeah, he probably was, given the context of the conversation.
Track protest.
He's talking about a homeland security. He is talking about people getting kidnapped off the streets. He is probably calling the cops pigs. But it's like that sentence is going to be taken and people are going to hear it. People are going to put together Zionist and pig and they're just going to be like, oh. And I understand we call cops pigs and there's like this whole thing about it. But that's the thing. So again, can we properly identify and categorize people when we see them? Can we actually understand what's happening? Right? So that's why I can understand, depending on how you hear it, why certain people would be like, oh, what's this? What's this? What's this? And then Twitch was already accused of anti-Semitism, right? And Hassan was like the big target of that. So I'm assuming that's why they banned him, but who knows why they really banned him, right? Because chat says, I hear Hassan call so many groups of people pigs that it didn't connect to me as a Jewish specific thing, but it makes sense on how tense and pro-Israel everything is, that the connection would, well, maybe that's just my brain. Maybe that's just my brain, right? Maybe my brain went, oh, I wonder if it's because of anti-Semitism. Because I know they were trying to, right? I know they were trying to come down on anti-Semitism, but I don't know. I don't know what the real reason was Twitch banned him. Chat says, I only know male chauvinist pig in derogatory way. Yeah, true. Like male chauvinist pig is a really good example too. We use pig a lot, which is really sad because they're actually quite intelligent and you definitely shouldn't eat them because they have the intelligence of like a 3-4-year-old. These poor pigs. These pigs are trying to live their life, bro. Okay, they're so smart. They're so smart. Okay. Let's see. Chat said, should people also monitor what they say? I think what the fuck is this? Holy crap, we're about to watch this. What the hell is this? What we really should be asking ourselves is, in which ways can I show up best for my community, my people, my kids, my family members? In which ways can I express my anger in sassy comments and a little bit derogatory in private? In which ways can I express to my community my upsettedness? In which ways can I show up and be the best version of myself for the world? Hold on, Don Lemon arrested by authorities? The fuck? What is this?
We have breaking news for you. Former CNN anchor Don Lemon was arrested late last night on federal charges tied to a protest earlier this month at a church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Lemon says he was reporting as a journalist when demonstrators interrupted a service to protest immigration enforcement. A magistrate judge previously rejected the case against him, but prosecutors later sought and obtained his arrest. Lemon was taken into custody in Los Angeles and is scheduled to appear in federal court this morning.
Oh my God.
His lawyer, Abby Lowell, calls the prosecution an unprecedented attack on the First Amendment. We have Lisa Rubin here, Molly John Fax joining us. But Jonathan Lemire, can we go through a little more what
Don has been going ham on TikTok. He's always on my TikTok feed. He's always there. And like I said, I've been critical of his misogyny, which I'm not surprised about. He's a man. But at the end of the day, he has been really out there. He has been really making his stance clear against this administration. I'm not surprised if they targeted him.
happened in St. Paul in the church. So then Lisa can break down these charges and how it all matches up.
Yeah, we'll lean on her legal expertise in just a moment. But Don Lemon is now an independent journalist, no longer at CNN. He was in Minnesota covering the protests following the 2 shooting deaths there, Renee Good and then Alex Pretty. This one on January 18th in St. Paul, so just over the river from Minneapolis, protesters went inside a church. They were disruptive to this service. We'll get to Lisa in a moment as to why that would be a charge here.
Are they arresting all of these people? Is it because it was a place of worship? Why? Is it because it's like considered terrorism to bother a place of worship? Why?
And Don Lemon, to remind viewers, is, someone who Donald Trump has criticized repeatedly in the past. Lemon has been pretty tough on Trump. He has called him names. He frequently calls him a liar. Lemon is someone that Trump has gone after on Truth Social and the like for many years. He's always been an object of some ridicule.
Imagine the president of the United States calling you out and making you enemy number one. Girls, the way I start sweating when bigger YouTubers even say my name, and I'm like, oh God, please don't let anybody know who I am. Imagine the president of the United States saying your name. How scary is that?
In the MAGA movement. But what is so important here is this is what matters, is that Lemon says, and we will see if it is the truth, but Lemon says he was acting as a journalist. He was not participating in the protest. He was covering the protest.
That was my question.
And if that is the case, if that's the case, that is indeed.
If I'm not mistaken, because Chad said why this church specifically, is this the church that the pastor and all those people were ICE agents? Is this the same? Is this the same line of churches? There's multiple churches that are engaging with ICE. Is that this church?
A chilling moment here for a journalist in the United States of America doing his job as a journalist and being charged for it. That is not.
Did he conduct interviews inside the? I mean, I know the protest was happening, and so he followed the protest in to cover the story. At any point, did he take part in?
Yeah, we'll see if we have footage here, but he did. He interviewed some of the protesters. He interviewed some of the parishioners. He interviewed, I think he tried to talk to the minister at one point, right. Which was perhaps disruptive in that moment. But again, he's acting as a journalist. And Lisa, let's talk about what charge is being levied here and your opinion as to why this is so important.
Let's talk about what we don't know. We know that Don Lemon is still in federal custody right now as we speak.
God.
But my understanding is...
Isn't he married? Does his husband know? Isn't he married? That's so sad. Also, yes, tax churches yesterday. Tax churches. They are forming groups. They are protesting together. Listen, growing up Catholic, not only do they talk about politics every week, but they absolutely encourage you on who to vote for. And they absolutely gather together to go protest. Churches are acting as political, because listen, their politics and their churches, they're one and the same. Which I don't blame them. I'm not criticizing religious people from being religious and political. I'm saying your churches cannot be acting in this way. Your churches are and should be taxed, right?
No charges have been filed and unsealed. Don Lemon and his legal team don't even know when he'll make his initial appearance at a Los Angeles federal court this morning. That having been said, Jonathan, based on the criminal complaint and affidavit that were filed when authorities tried to get initial charges against Don Lemon to stick, I can tell you that it appears that the federal government is pursuing charges under what's called the FACE Act. And the FACE Act is something that folks who follow the reproductive justice movement are very familiar with, because it most commonly has been used to prosecute people who block access to reproductive health clinics, who sit there and physically block it. But the FACE Act also prohibits interfering by force with the right to religious worship. And this is an administration who has said they won't use the FACE Act to prosecute crimes of the first type, and they are going to start to use the FACE Act to prosecute crimes of the second.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. And this goes back to the beginning of Street, what we were talking about. What do we call a government that weaponizes its laws against its citizens for standing up for justice? What do we call that? What do we call that? So what are you supposed to do, right? And what if it was church parishioners? So question, just to be clear, what if it was church parishioners protesting their own church? Can they do that? Right? And this is why we have to have these conversations about what do we call this? Chat says the baddies. Are we the baddies? Baddies. This is absolute bad. So that's why we have to be cautious about our government utilizing the laws to take advantage of people. Again, it's like when you're dating a person and they weaponize therapy speak to gaslight you. The government, we are in an abusive relationship with the American government, and we are being gaslit to shit right now, okay? And they're utilizing every tool to be weaponized against us when we gave it to them in the first place so they could help us. It's like we literally gave them tools to make our relationship better, and then they turned around and stabbed us with it. And we were like, what are you doing that for? Okay? So that's the dilemma. That's why these stories are so important.